He came into my office in Cyprus looking completely deflated. And it's the first time I've heard him say, Alex, I just want to throw in the towel. And he said, Alex, I'm just not sizing up in some of these huge opportunities. We've had some of the biggest opportunities we've had for the last couple of years. And I said, yeah, you could possibly take a break now, but it'll just take one thing to also rejuvenate your energy.
So on that, let's go straight into the collector, because you've described, the collector, in a few of our videos, and that we've had in the past, his $1.5 million day. It was a big day in the markets. It was an incredible thing to witness from my perspective, from a risk team perspective, and watching the movements and watching the markets just go absolutely wild. But before that, there was a bit of a lead up into that. Can you walk us through the moment that you had with him, and what shifted between that conversation and the next trading day where suddenly this big trade presented itself?
There's so much to unpack here from so many angles, for experienced traders, for junior traders, for people on emotional journeys, for people on developing their edge journey. And with regards to the collector, so we call him the collector because in our book, Traders of Our Time, his chapter is called The Collector. We had a laugh and recently about, if we were to do another book, we'd change his name, and I'll describe what name we'll change that to. But that day of making 7 figures in a trading day, 1.5 million, was setting the flag that it's possible to make that type of P&L in a sunny environment. Because it's all well having all of us, myself, the collector, coming out to Cyprus with these dreams and ambitions of how do we build a floor out in a sunny climate. And again, I want to reiterate this point that many floors collapsed. Or single traders or teams who left, guys who went to Cape Town, guys who went to Gibraltar, guys who went to Dubai, they never reached the heights in their performance that they performed when they were in, for example, London. So we knew what we were up against, because we're up against when it's a slow day in the market. Oh, let's go to the beach. In London, it's a slow day in the market. Well, we stick at it because it's rainy and cold outside. Let's just stick and trade. So how are we going to bypass? And simply that, we just behavior of rocking up, behavior of routine, of ritual, making sure collectively people are at their desk and trading. And there's no midweek golf games. There's no midweek volleyball sessions. We provide a facility around if we need a physiological flush for 10 minutes, either side of the day. There's that optionality. But that day, making 1.5 almost validated. It was so important. It validated that it is possible to still push those numbers. And until, when Jackie Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, whenever something is done for the first time, it just raises the group. It raises what's possible. And then you create your own little sphere, your own little domain that it's possible, because it's been done, and you get that positive feedback loop. And so because that was achieved, but leading into a $1.5 million day was clouded in doubts, was clouded in a trader who for the past year and a half missed multiple opportunities, just going up to the toilet, maybe something happened in that moment, being very busy in helping developing the floor, the traders, so being distracted. In London, this trader was just focused on his own career. Now in Cyprus, he had responsibilities. He had responsibility of the morale of the group, of the politics that could be existing between traders. And so that energy distracts you from your core and your main game. And over a period of almost 18 months, 20 months, he was performing. Now, this is a trader who possibly the biggest drawdown in his account from equity account high is probably 3%, 3.5% maybe at the most. We've spoken multiple times that, he shouldn't get flustered if he has a drawdown of more than 10%, because it's still a very healthy drawdown in relative terms. And so, but he wasn't performing at the levels that he was performing in 2022. But he was also comparing himself in an environment that was remarkably less opportunistic for his edge. Now, this is a trader. Why we call him the collector is because he's always collecting edge. He's always observing, collecting new edge. Now, on that day, the day prior to making the 1.5 million, he came into my office in Cyprus, looking completely deflated, sitting in a chair opposite me, looking depressed. And it's the first time I've heard him say, "Alex, I just want to throw in the towel." It's the first time I've heard him ever, because he's, even in the darkest of hours, he's always trying to solve it. But I think the overwhelming sense of feeling of helping develop a team, being a mentor, being an incredible mentor, the two traders that we're going to be speaking about, 2 videos, are really as a result of his mentoring and his development. And this is also what's so powerful about the Cyprus office. And so that day he sat next to me and we discussed, and he said, "Alex, I'm just not sizing up in some of these huge opportunities. We've had some of the biggest opportunities we've had for the last couple of years in this Trump tariff era, Iran-Israel era." And he was deflated. His face was white, even though he's got a great golden tan at the moment. And but it just says what the spirit, can eat at you. And so I looked at him and I said, "This is no time to worry about what's happened over the past 2 years. This is no time to be concerned about self-loathing. And because the markets are too opportunistic at the moment, and as Angus Fletcher always speaks about, is just focus on the now plus one. Just plan for the next trade, because the next trade could be the most important trade." And so, but, if you're sitting there, his energy was depleted. He was tired. And I said, "Yeah, you could possibly take a break now, but it will just take one thing to also rejuvenate your energy." And sometimes a performance stimulant can rejuvenate you, but you just have to rock up. And our best traders can be emotionally depleted, morally depleted, but they can still just rock up. Can you push through that discomfort? And so the next day he arrived on the floor. A Trump tweet came out. It was a sophisticated trading tweet in the sense that there were 2 elements to this tweet. 2 elements to this tweet, that the one side was, you sell risk assets. But later on in the tweet, and this is where there was the traders who got on the first part of the tweet, and he actually made multiple plans for the Chinese response on tariffs, or the vice versa in the US. And then one of his plans was a pause on tariffs. And what was so magical about this trade, it involved collective intelligence. It involved multi-minds within a team. And seeing that in that moment when that tweet dropped, and the first part of the tweet, that he knew, I'm not going to get involved in that part of the tweet. Many other traders got involved in that part of the tweet. Then there was a junior trader on the desk, a junior trader that he was responsible in mentoring, a junior trader that we've cultivated through the Axia journey. He'd been through our career program. He had been through our 6-month blueprint coaching program. He had graduated to being a live trader, shouted out, had the conviction, had the trust of the group. Because, a junior trader to shout out on the floor, where there's guys maybe with collective experience of 25 odd years, to shout out and say, pause. The tweet says pause. In that moment, the collector, because what happens, regardless of your energetic state, regardless of the space you are in emotionally, In that moment, when that junior trader shouted pause, what actually comes to the fore and that overcomes energy depletion, overcomes your moral view of yourself, your sadomasochist, how you've been destroying yourself emotionally, is experience, is sense of occasion, is understanding in that moment there was a plan that I had. And a good plan can override your emotions. A good plan can override a low energetic state, because it almost, that plan pulls at you, you need to trade me. And so, and we speak about this Angus Fletcher, you always want to be the planner and not the plan. And we'll elaborate this maybe on another video. And in that moment, he lifted size across multiple markets. I can't even remember all the markets, ES, Euro stocks, I think gold. And he probably left approximately another $500,000 on the table, because when the Euro stocks went into volatility shut, he pulled up his P&L, and he knows not to look at his P&L in trade. Pulled up his P&L, he saw this P&L, he started lightening up his position in the Euro stocks quite significantly. And there's a lesson in that, and he knows. He was still not proud of this trade. It's the same trade almost with the Razor, did the same thing. We talk about the Razor when he had a multiple, over $3.5 million day. He left probably another $3.5 million on the trade, simply because he pulled up his P&L, saw he was flashing multiple, 7 figures. He exited a trade just before it really got going. And so this is what happened with the collector. But the true power in this story is that regardless of how far down you are emotionally, how unfair you think things are happening, how unfair you think the environment is, and a lot of this unfairness is perception. And we generate these, when the ego is rising, we generate these. And in that moment, junior trader shouts out, that junior trader, a function of the senior trader. As he shouts it out, the senior trader executes. And this is the power of the collective. This is the power of communication, because another big part of what's tricky on a trading floor is when one trader is disagreeing with another trader on trading floor, or there's a bit of friction, then the whole trading floor becomes quiet. So what happened? And so we at Axia are always trying to push traders to get over themselves. Reserve judgment for maybe when you're in the stars. Because that moment when you're judging somebody else, you actually are losing out the potential of a floor that's communicating in the future. And so he created that environment. That junior trader had the confidence, the trust to trust what he saw in that tweet, shout it out, because the senior trader, the collector, never saw that. He executed the trade. He made 1.5 million, left quite a bit on the table still. I can tell you, his energy the next day changed. I mean, what was your experience? And you on the floor that day, right?
Oh yeah. And I mean, for me, it was a very, I mean, you could feel the air in the moment when all of this was happening, and it almost feels like slow motion for me now when I look back on it, because there were so many moving parts, right? From like you said, from the junior trader calling out, and it was just from that moment on, and you saw this whole sequence of events happen from a risk perspective on the screen, and of course, the whole screen's blipping up and going crazy, and of course, I'm the primary for all of the Cyprus guys, but I work with the whole team, to see all of that play out in the way it did play out, and to see someone of such experience, someone who's been in this game for such a long time, and it's so interesting to hear how even traders of that level can still have that doubt or that feeling of being down and everything else, but then to still come in the next day. And when the right triggers are placed, and when the market pulls you in, is almost saying to you, trade me, to effortlessly just hit and lift and do what he had done, almost in just like a fashion of course it's not easy. It's many years and years and years of dedication to his craft, but to almost be able to pull the moves that he pulled on that day, it was a magical thing to see, and to see the numbers just flying and just going crazy. The trade for me, it wasn't just that, that great to see, obviously, the P&L spike. But I think it's also, like we've already talked about, it was the beginning of a new push, right, for him and for the floor in general, because it set that new bar, as you said, and then also not just for him, but for all of the traders around him, and that whole floor just changed. The bar had changed, the frequency of the talking and the collaboration, all kind of, I think, pivoted quite substantially after that as well, from my point of view, and seeing that. But yeah, it was an incredible day to see, and to see someone go from, like you're saying, and having that conversation with you the day before, and then to come in that day and to pull that performance out of the bag. Yeah, it was something it was incredible to witness for me. I want to go back to the line that you said, be the planner, not the plan, because I think there's just so much to unpack from that. I mean, can you unpack what that means in terms of how that trader, the collector, how is he evolving just from that alone?
Yeah, we're currently having internal workshops with Professor Angus Fletcher at the moment. He's leads a think tank in Ohio University called Project Narrative. He works with the U.S. Special Forces, the most so-called unclassified units that do the most secretive operations around the world on decision making. And we've done a lot of work with him over the last couple of years. At Axia, one of my fundamental views is I try not to look around at what other trading teams or trading floors are doing. I look at other domains and other spaces, such as U.S. Special Forces, maybe such as other sports arenas, incredible technology labs, on how we can employ some of those lessons in our space. And working with Professor Angus Fletcher has been hugely instrumental for the cultivation of human edge and right brain thinking and right brain development. All the investment, all the deployment of capital at the moment around the world is in the left brain, these logic technologies, agentic technologies, artificial intelligence. It's where the global $1 trillion investment is all happening, and it's powerful and it's amazing and it's incredible. The instigator being the human, right? The creative human. But how are we developing the creative human who can act with a sample set of zero? We talk about this in the Warriors chapter of Traders of Our Time. And be the planner, not the plan. And we had a session on Sunday with our internal traders on this training protocol. And the session, one of the things we probed the traders is, can you measure yourself at the end of the year on the velocity of plans that you've made? Because the more plans you do make, the better you get at the plan, the better you get at your feedback loops, at your debriefs. Arriving in the market with no plan and just trading, you're not going to have the feedback loop because you had nowhere to start. And when you plan more, invariably most plans break. But when you keep on planning, you become more anti-fragile because your ability to work from a broken plan becomes more adaptable. You take the learning, you take the lesson. And so the more plans you make, and the more those plans break, you get better at getting onto a good plan. And so you're not ever relying on a plan. You're relying on being a great planner. And, Angus Fletcher talks about, many metaphors within, historic battles, great historical, army leaders, and of how, the moment something became coded, the moment something became hard rules, and when great war generals, Napoleon, whenever they had their first defeat, or Clausewitz, whenever they had their first major defeats, a lot of the times was because they hard coded their rules. The moment you hard code rules, you don't allow for the emergent, for the for the new opportunity. So that's what we're working on at Axia. We're working on the ability to see the new, the exceptional information in the market. And we're going to be talking more about this probably from the end of August, September onwards, with this new training protocol that we're working with on Angus Fletcher in order to train creativity for traders. And so be the plan and not the plan is just simply have a great velocity in your game. Planning, and one of our senior traders, the student, part of Traders of Our Time, that we speak about, in the book, is at the beginning of this year he was great at planning as the tariffs started coming to the markets, but where he started struggling as his energy started depleting, your plans become less. And so just being aware of that, of when your plans become less, you become more reactionary in the markets. And so we spoke, this workshop that you had on Sunday night, is many of the senior traders, know when they plan less, they become more reactionary. When you become more reactionary, the variance in your results happening more often. But when you plan, you also know when something's not working. When you don't plan, you don't know when something's not working.
Yeah.
So be the plan and not the plan.
It's wonderful, and the whole. I mean, I know we will be unpacking everything that we're doing with Professor Angus Fletcher in later videos, but I've got to say, to be part of that project as well myself, I've almost uncovered a lot about myself and how I operate and how I deal with the traders, or how I deal with the grads, and almost tackle problems from that perspective. So it's just incredibly applicable. But it's also great to see that when you are a trader of Axia, it's just to be part of this collective of learning, whether it be via Prime or whether it be via collective intelligence, being on the floor with the workshops. It's so that power of learning is, I think, the most important key factor. I think a massive, huge factor that you bring to Axia is that it's being able to try the new methods, try and find these methods like you have done, and how you've been so successful at doing, and seeing traders start from the beginnings of the career to 7-8 figures is by being almost evolutionary and revolutionary, should I say. And so it's been incredibly it's been an incredible experience to witness, especially
and I think, Peter, we have to, as a firm, we know nothing stands still. The evolutionary pace, technology now is evolving fast, and one of our technologies that we're investing in, that we will release at the end of the year for our traders, the strap line, there is see the future faster, and that's all right brain investment. At Axia we're investing in both sides of the brain. There's kind of those AI technologies, but we also invest where a lot of people. I think one of our biggest edges is that we understand we keep on learning more about the right brain, about that creative side which machines cannot tap into yet. And so we need to take risk. We need to, and when I say take risk in learning. We incredibly risk prudent in how we need to make a junior trader survive the being part of his career. We can talk about this maybe at the end of today. But at Axia, we need to consistently innovate. We need to consistently apply new modes of thinking, new modes of how we take on opportunity. But at the same time, we provide an infrastructure. It still needs the right caliber of individual. You can come into an oasis of learning, but if you enter that oasis of learning and you don't have your own chutzpah, your own drive, your own ability to be resilient, if you don't have any of that, you will struggle.